Hello, everyone. This is Miki's Corner, where I talk to you in a little corner. And today we'll be talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is my mic loud? Yeah. So, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened on October 1962. It was a direct confrontation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It was the moment when the two superpowers almost reached nuclear conflict. The entire world was hanging on the edge of their seats, biting their nails, screaming, crying, throwing up, whatever. um, and it happened after an embarrassing attempt by the U.S. to overthrow the Castro regime in Cuba with the Bay of Pigs invasion. Nikita Khrushchev, yes, Khrushchev, had reached a secret agreement with the Cuban premier president dictator, Fidel Castro, to place Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba in order to deter any future invasion attempts, because the U.S. mainland was 90 miles away. Well, I wouldn't consider it the mainland because the city has to be connected to the others with bridges. But either way, the the U.S. mainland was connected 90 miles away from Key West, Florida, which is where I lived for 17 years. Um, and I'll talk more on that in a little bit, but let me continue. Um, oh, by the way, even though it was obvious that the United States staged the Bay of Pigs invasion, the superpower tried to make sure it wasn't traced to them. I don't really know how to explain it, but they just did not want to be associated with it. Um, Anyways, the construction of missile sites began in the late summer, but U.S. intelligence discovered evidence of a general Soviet arms buildup on Cuba. On September 4th, 1962, President Kennedy issued a public warning against the introduction of offensive weapons into Cuba. But despite the warning, more than a month later, a U.S. U-2 aircraft took several pictures showing the missile sites under construction in Cuba. Then those images were processed and sent to the White House. Where are we? Okay, so now, right? Um, okay. For 13 days in October, the world was waiting, like I mentioned before. But no one was really so close to the action compared to Key West, Florida. Key West is a tiny population, I think now. No, not a tiny population. A tiny city, only 18 miles above water. That is now that has a population of 20,000 people, and it definitely does not have the space to house all those people. But back then, it was probably 10 times less. Um, but the morning of the naval blockade on Cuba, the president had uh sorry, okay, here. I lost in my documents. Oh, where are we? Where are we? Okay. On October 23rd, there we go. I was looking for the date, 1962. The people of Key West woke up to find out the U.S. military had taken over the island, and they were living in the middle of a armed camp. There was barbed wires, machine gun positions, missiles were positioned at strategic locations and beaches throughout the island. The army that occupied the Casa Marina Hotel, which is in downtown Key West, if I'm correct, and it's very close to the water. It's also near the southernmost point, which is this buoy structure that was built to signify that now that is officially 90 miles from Cuba. Um, the army took over the hotel and was using it as a command headquarters. There is a fear of war with everyone in Key West, and there was a naval airfield at Boca Chica, which is an island next to Key West, and the United States thought it would be a primary target in any skirmish between the Soviets and Cuba with the Soviets and Cuba. So now, in just a matter of days, the amount of military personnel went from 3,000 to 5,000, and there was along the US 1 highway, armed guards were stationed at each end of the 43 bridges that connect the Florida Keys, because the Florida Keys is just a series of islands. You don't reach the mainland until you reach Florida City, um, officially. Okay. Now, October 27th, 1962 was the day that the two superpowers came the closest within inches of starting the first global nuclear war. U.S. Navy ships had forced the Soviet submarines to surface, and then it became evident that U.S. ships had narrowly missed being hit by a Soviet nuclear torpedo that was launched at them. On the same day, where am I? My notes. Oh my god, my notes. Oh yeah. On the same day, the United States reconnaissance plane was shot down over in Cuba, killing the pilot. But neither of the sides had responded with force at these incidents. The next day, on October 28th, both sides used restraint, and President John Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev came to a negotiated agreement. The United States will pull out its missiles out of Turkey, while the Soviet Union will remove all the missiles it had installed in Cuba. The United States also agreed to never attack Cuba, and once again, QS played a pivotal role in protecting the freedoms that we enjoy today. QS, despite it being the southernmost tip of the USA, it has it has played a very important roles in many, if not all, the wars the United States have been in, even the Civil War. The city actually at some point tried to be its own country. I think it was its own country for at least for an hour at most. But something I wanted to share was Smathers Beach in Key West. Is a very pivotal beach. It is very close to actually all where all the now schools are. In Key West, and the people that live nearby woke up and saw anti-craft missiles that were positioned in where the at the top, at the, I guess, tip, I don't know, where the water meets the sand there, where right there, positioned in strategic spots towards Cuba. And it very much like how in the Civil War, where the rich had sat around and had picnics while watching the fight happen. These guys they're not having picnics, but they are sitting around, and many of them are beach goers. So some have swimsuits on, and they're just looking around at what happened to their lovely beach. Yeah, and there was this submarine that also didn't really know that lost communication with the with Russia. It was a Russian submarine, and they had their own like nuclear superpower button that they could press if they ever felt the need to, send the nuclear bomb. Um but the thing is, it needed 3 unanimous votes, pushes, buttons to to set off the nuclear bomb, and thankfully one of the officers decided not to say yes. So we are all alive now. Key West is a part of the U.S. still. But yeah, that's the Cuban Missile Crisis and its connection to Key West, a very pivotal and important American city town thing in Florida, to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.